What about some of the other characters in the book? Like, I really like the character of Martin Sauvage, who is a Mi'kmaq man with whom Jeanne has kind of almost a romantic relationship, but then not quite because they marry other people.
Yeah.
So is he a real person?
No, he was not real, but his uncle was real.
Okay.
I made him the nephew of Jean Sauvage, who was one of the 3 Mi'kmaq scouts who were working for the fortress of 1744 around that time. The fortress hired these Mi'kmaq because they could move around very freely, and they could, get all kinds of information about British ships and maneuvers and anything like this. So I made Martin, Jean Sauvage's nephew, and I wanted to keep the Mi'kmaq in the story because, there were 3 peoples here. There was the Mi'kmaq, the French, and the British, not just the French and the British. So, and then I kept him through the story. I was thinking one day, if I were writing the story in modern times, I might say they were soulmates, but I couldn't use that expression.
Right. Yeah. And it nicely shows, too, the relationship between, like, they had a really amicable relationship,
Yes.
the Acadians and
The
the Mi'kmaq.
Acadians and
Yeah,
yeah.
I really liked that. What about the character of Le Maigre?
Le
Is he
Maigre?
good?
Yeah. I took an instant dislike to him. I shouldn't admit it vaguely, but he was called Joseph Leblanc dit Le Maigre because he was very fat. Maigre means skinny, but he was very fat. And he was a wheeler dealer, and apparently at one time he was one of the wealthiest men in Acadia. He made a great deal of money, but I think he, sometimes it might have been a little shady. But I didn't like him, and Jeanne doesn't like him. As I say somewhere in the book, she felt that he took up a lot of room. He was big physically, but wherever he was, he took up a lot of room. And he became Jeanne's, he became Joseph's father-in-law. Joseph married his daughter, so he almost became part of the family. And he was an influence on Joseph. So Jeanne didn't like him, but he didn't come to a very good end.
No. Was there anything really surprising or interesting that you learned that's really surprised you while you were doing research for the novel?
Well, I knew roughly, I knew the story roughly. I'd done research before. But what I found is along the way there were some really nice surprises, I wasn't too keen on getting things off the internet. I thought that was a bit iffy. But I came across several journals. These people kept journals, which is wonderful. Like today we'd put it on the computer. And one of them was a man called Gamaliel Smethurst, who was a British subject, born around the Boston area. But during the 7 Years' War, he thought, well, he might as well profit from the war. A lot of people were doing it. This didn't start just today, So he loaded a ship, and when he found himself in the Ristigouche area, it ran aground. So, of course, he was stranded there, and he met a lot of Acadians who were hiding from the British there. And I come across this comment. He met Joseph Dugas, who is Jeanne's brother, and I knew they were in the area at the time. And he said he'd met him. He was a very good carpenter, helped him repair his ship. And he mentioned that he'd gone to visit his brother, who was ill, in his little hut or little cabin. Now, I knew that the Mackenzie raid was coming, and I knew that Abraham and Joseph were going to be captured, and their families, as well as Jeanne and her husband. But there was no mention of Charles in the list of prisoners that were taken to George's Island. So I thought, aha, Charles was sick. Because Mackenzie couldn't take all the Acadians that he found there, but he didn't take the elderly, he didn't take the sick, he didn't take the pregnant women. He made sure he had the resistors. So Charles obviously was left there. And he survived, and he went and settled in a town that's now known as Carleton, Quebec, which is very close. And one of his sons married the daughter of a prominent Acadian, and they developed Caraquet. So that area is filled with Dugas. That he's formed a dynasty of Dugas up there, yeah.
Wow.
But it's little things like that made it much easier. It gave connections, you know. And the census that they took all the time, they were a great source of information.